The red sun of Kepler 442b hung low in the purple sky when the Zephyrian hunting party finally cornered their prize. Huntmaster Veltar raised his scaled hand, signaling his 11 hunters to spread out in a wide circle around the massive creature they had been tracking for 3 days. The beast stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its black fur rippling with muscle beneath the alien starlight. Yellow eyes glowed in the darkness as it turned its massive head from side to side, searching for an escape route that no longer existed. The creature's breath came in heavy pants, steam rising from its open mouth in the cool evening air. "Look at the size of it," whispered Crixall, Veltar's second-in-command. His 4 eyes gleamed with excitement as he adjusted his plasma rifle. "The elders will sing songs of this hunt for generations." Veltar nodded, his own weapon humming with deadly energy. The Zephyrians had traveled across 3 star systems to reach this remote mining world, drawn by stories of the apex predator that ruled the forests. Their advanced scanners had detected the creature's massive heat signature days ago, but tracking it through the dense woodland had proven more difficult than expected. The beast was smart. It had led them through streams to break their scent, trail doubled back on its own path, and even used the underground cave systems to disappear completely for hours at a time. But Zephyrian technology was superior, and their patience was legendary among hunting cultures across the galaxy. Now, as the creature stood trapped in a small clearing surrounded by towering trees, Veltar felt the familiar rush of victory. This would be his greatest trophy, proof of his skill as a hunter and leader. The mounted head would grace the wall of his clan's great hall, and the pelt would become a ceremonial cloak for future huntmasters. The beast suddenly threw back its head and released a long, mournful howl that echoed through the forest. The sound sent chills down the spines of even the most experienced hunters. It was not the cry of a mindless animal, but something deeper, more intelligent, something that spoke of loss and desperation. "It calls for help that will never come," Veltar said, raising his weapon. "Fire!" 12 plasma bolts lit up the clearing in brilliant blue-white light. The beast tried to leap away, its powerful legs launching it toward the tree line, but the energy weapons were too fast and too accurate. The first bolt caught it in the shoulder, spinning it around. The second and third struck its hindquarters, sending it crashing to the forest floor. Still, the creature fought. It rolled to its feet, blood matting its fur, and charged directly at Veltar. The huntmaster had to admire its courage even as he fired again. The bolt struck the beast's center mass, and it stumbled, falling to its knees just 3 feet from where Veltar stood. For a moment, hunter and prey stared at each other. The creature's yellow eyes held no fear, only a deep sadness that Veltar found disturbing. Then the light faded from those eyes, and the great beast collapsed onto its side. The hunting party erupted in cheers and victory cries. Crixall fired, his weapon into the air while others began the ritual victory dance of their people. Veltar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before moving forward to examine their kill. The beast was even more magnificent up close. Its fur was thick and soft, perfect for the ceremonial cloak he planned to have made. The teeth were long and sharp, ivory white against the black lips. The claws were like curved daggers, worn smooth by years of running through rocky terrain. "Wait," said Zixoth, the youngest member of the hunting party. "What is this?" Veltar looked where the young hunter was pointing. Around the creature's thick neck was a band of some unknown material, dark blue with silver markings. It was clearly artificial, made by intelligent hands, but the design was unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases, probably left by the mining creatures, Crixall said dismissively. The scanners detected several of them in the area. Primitive beings barely above animal intelligence themselves. They probably worship this beast as some kind of god. Veltar knelt beside the creature's head and examined the collar more closely. The markings were not random scratches, but carefully carved symbols. There was even what appeared to be a small metal plate, with more symbols etched into its surface. "Should we remove it?" asked Zixoth. "Leave it," Veltar decided. "It adds to the mystery of the hunt. The elders will be curious about the primitive culture that revered this beast." The sound of heavy footsteps crashing through the underbrush interrupted their celebration. Something large was moving through the forest toward them, breaking branches and crushing smaller plants underfoot. The hunters quickly raised their weapons, thinking perhaps another beast was approaching. But what emerged from the tree line was not another creature like the one they had just killed. It walked on two legs like a Zephyrian, but it was shorter and broader, with pale skin and dark hair covering only the top of its head. It wore strange clothes made of rough material and heavy boots that explained the loud footsteps. The being stopped at the edge of the clearing and stared at the scene before it. Its small eyes moved from the dead creature to the celebrating hunters, and something in its expression changed. The features hardened, and the hands clenched into fists. "Luna," the creature said, its voice rough with emotion. It dropped to its knees beside the dead beast and placed one hand on the massive head. "Oh, Luna, what did they do to you?" The hunters watched in fascination as the primitive being seemed to mourn the dead creature. This was better than they had hoped. Not only had they killed the apex predator of this world, but they had also discovered that the local primitives worshipped it. The story would be even more impressive when they returned home. "Luna," the being repeated, and now there were clear signs of water leaking from its eyes. "I'm so sorry, girl. I should have been here." Veltar stepped forward, his weapon still in his hands, but lowered in a gesture of superiority rather than threat. The primitive looked up at him with eyes that seemed to burn with some inner fire. "Do not mourn, primitive one," Veltar said, using the universal translator built into his suit. "The beast died with honor, as prey should. We are great hunters from the stars, and we have freed your world from this danger." The being stood slowly, never taking its eyes off Veltar. When it spoke, its voice was quiet, but carried clearly across the clearing. "Her name was Luna. She was my friend. And you just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Jake Morrison carried Luna's body through the forest with his bare hands, refusing to use any of the mining equipment that would have made the task easier. The weight meant nothing to him now. The 300-pound wolf had been light as a feather when she was alive and running beside him. Now she felt heavier than the mining mechs he operated every day. The Zephyrians followed at a distance, their weapons ready but their attitude casual. They spoke among themselves in their clicking language, occasionally pointing at Jake or laughing at something one of them said. To them, he was just another primitive native, probably the creature's keeper or worshipper. They had no idea what they had done. Jake's mining facility sat in a small valley between two hills, surrounded by the equipment and prefab buildings that had been his home for 3 years. Solar collectors gleamed on the rooftops, and the familiar hum of the ore processors filled the evening air. It looked peaceful, ordinary, like thousands of other small mining operations scattered across human space. He set Luna down gently beside the small garden where he grew his own food. She had loved to lie in the sun here while he worked, watching him plant seeds and tend the growing vegetables. Her favorite spot was under the earth apple tree he had managed to grow from seeds brought from home. The Zephyrians set up their camp just outside his perimeter fence, treating his property like a convenient rest stop. They deployed their hunting shelters and energy shields, creating a small fortress of alien technology. Their leader, the one who had spoken to him in the forest, approached the fence. "Primitive one," Veltar called out, his translator making his voice sound mechanical. "We will rest here tonight. Do not interfere with our camp and we will not harm you." Jake looked up from where he knelt beside Luna's still form. "Get off my land." The statement puzzled Veltar. The concept of land ownership among primitives was interesting but irrelevant. "We go where we please, small one. Be grateful we allow you to live near our camp." Jake stood slowly. The movement was controlled, deliberate, like a man checking every muscle before committing to action. "I said get off my land, take your people and leave this planet." Crixall joined his leader at the fence, his 4 eyes gleaming with amusement. "The primitive thinks it can give orders to hunters of the Zephyrian Empire. Perhaps we should teach it proper respect." "No," Veltar said, raising a hand to stop his subordinate. "It mourns the beast. Such devotion, even among primitives, deserves some consideration. We will ignore its words. They returned to their camp, dismissing Jake as a minor annoyance. Within minutes, they had cooking fires burning and were preparing their evening meal. The smell of alien spices drifted across the small valley. Jake walked into his main building and sealed the door behind him. The familiar surroundings felt different now, emptied of the presence that had shared this space with him for 3 years. Luna's sleeping mat lay beside his bed. Her food bowl sat in the kitchen corner. Her favorite toy, a piece of earth rope he had braided for her, lay on the floor where she had dropped it that morning. He moved to his communication array and activated the quantum transmitter. The device was military grade, far more advanced than anything a simple miner should have owned. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease as he opened a channel to coordinates deep in the asteroid belt. "Danny, are you there?" The response came after several seconds, distorted by distance and interference. "Jake, what's wrong? You sound like hell." They killed Luna. Silence stretched across the void between planets. Jake stared at the transmitter, waiting for his brother's voice. "Who?" Danny's voice came back harder, colder. "Alien hunters. They shot her down like she was nothing. Called her a beast." Another pause. Jake could picture his brother's face, the same hard lines and gray eyes they both inherited from their father. Danny Morrison had been a combat engineer in the Colonial Defense Force before the mining job. He understood what Luna meant to Jake, understood the bond between a human and the animal that chose to stand beside them. How many? 12. Maybe more. They're camped outside my fence right now, acting like they own the place. I'm coming. Kate, too. We'll bring friends. Jake closed his eyes and felt something cold settle in his chest. "Danny, they don't know what they did. They don't know what humans are. Their mistake." The transmission ended, leaving Jake alone in the quiet building. He walked to his personal storage locker and entered a code he had not used in 5 years. Inside, wrapped in old cloth, lay the tools of his former profession: combat knife, sidearm, ammunition, body armor. All the things a man hoped never to need again. He had come to this remote world to escape the memories of war, to find peace in the simple work of pulling valuable ore from dead rock. Luna had found him here. A young wolf, somehow transported in a cargo hold, lost and alone just like him. She had chosen him, the way animals sometimes chose humans, and together they had built something resembling a normal life. Now that life was over. Jake spent the evening preparing. He cleaned his weapons and checked his equipment. He reviewed the building's defensive systems and armed the security protocols he had hoped never to use. He updated his personal files and recorded messages he hoped his family would never need to hear. Most importantly, he studied his enemies. The Zephyrians were proud, advanced, and confident in their superiority. Their technology was impressive. Their tactics sound for hunting animals, but they had never faced humans in combat. They thought in terms of honor and glory, not survival and revenge. They had no idea that humans were known throughout the galaxy as the species that never forgave and never forgot. They had never heard the stories told in quiet corners of every spaceport, whispered warnings about the persistence hunters who would follow an enemy across star systems and through decades to settle a debt. They thought they had killed an animal and impressed a primitive. They had murdered a family member and declared war on humanity. Outside, the Zephyrians celebrated their successful hunt around their campfires. They shared stories of past victories and planned future expeditions. Some spoke of returning to this world to hunt more creatures, maybe even capturing some of the primitives for study. Jake watched them through his security cameras and felt nothing but cold purpose. Luna lay still under the Earth apple tree, and, somewhere in the asteroid belt, his brother was already gathering the tools they would need. The Zephyrians had no idea that their greatest hunt was about to begin, and this time, they would be the prey. The Iron Resolve dropped out of hyperspace 3 days later, its hull scarred from years of asteroid mining operations. The ship looked like a flying junkyard to anyone who did not know better. But Jake recognized the hidden weapons ports and reinforced armor plating that his brother had added over the years. Danny Morrison was not just a miner. None of them were. The ship landed in Jake's main processing yard, crushing several pieces of equipment under its weight. Jake did not care about the damage. He stood beside Luna's grave and watched 4 figures emerge from the airlock, each carrying military-grade equipment bags. Danny came first, his face grim under his mining helmet. He had the same gray eyes as Jake, but his hair had gone white at the temples. Behind him came Kate Morrison, Danny's wife and the best weapons specialist Jake had ever served with. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she moved with the careful precision of someone who understood that small mistakes could kill people. The third person was Lisa Chen, small and quiet, with dark eyes that missed nothing. She had been special forces before the mining job, trained in infiltration and elimination. She carried herself like a predator, always watching for threats and opportunities. Last came Ben Cooper, a big man with gentle hands and a talent for making things explode exactly when and where he wanted them to. He had lost his left arm in the colony wars, but the mechanical replacement was stronger than flesh and twice as steady. The Zephyrians watched the new arrivals from their camp with mild interest. To them, it looked like more primitives had come to mourn the dead beast. They had no idea they were looking at some of the most dangerous humans in known space. Danny walked straight to Luna's grave and knelt beside the small marker Jake had made. He placed one hand on the earth apple tree and closed his eyes. "She was a good girl," he said quietly. "Smart as hell and loyal to the end." "She saved my life twice," Jake replied. "Once from a cave-in, once from claim jumpers who thought I was alone." Kate joined them, her expression cold as winter. "Tell us about the targets." Jake led them into his main building, where he had prepared detailed information about their enemies. The walls were covered with pictures taken by his security cameras, showing each Zephyrian hunter their weapons and their daily routines. 12 of them, Jake began. The leader is called Veltar. He's the one who gave the order to kill Luna. His second in command is Krixal, younger and more aggressive. They have advanced plasma weapons and personal energy shields. Lisa studied the pictures with professional interest. Movement patterns? Predictable. They set up the same perimeter every night, post guards in the same rotation. They're hunters, not soldiers. They think in terms of stalking prey, not fighting an equal enemy. Ben examined the images of their camp. Energy shields will be a problem. Plasma weapons too. We need to level the playing field. Kate was already unpacking her equipment bags. "I brought presents. EMP grenades should disrupt their shields. Armor-piercing rounds for their weapons and something special for their leader." Danny spread a map of the local area on Jake's table. "What's the terrain like?" "Dense forest, rocky hills, underground cave systems. I know every inch of it. Luna. And I explored it all over the past 3 years." "Good. We use the environment against them, make them come to us on our terms." They spent the next 2 days preparing. Ben disappeared into the forest and returned with detailed information about the best places to set traps and ambush points. Lisa scouted the Zephyrian camp and memorized their routines down to the minute. Kate worked on modifying their weapons and equipment to be more effective against alien technology. Jake focused on psychological warfare. The first sign of trouble came on the 3rd night when the Zephyrians woke to find one of their hunting trophies missing. A preserved head from their previous hunt had simply vanished from their camp, leaving no trace of how it had been taken. "Scavengers," Krixal suggested. "Some native creature took it during the night." But Veltar was not convinced. His sensors should have detected any animal large enough to carry off the trophy. The perimeter alarms had not been triggered. Something was wrong. The next morning, they found the missing trophy placed carefully beside the dead beast's grave, arranged as if paying respect to the fallen creature. Small earth flowers had been placed around it, and a piece of the beast's collar lay beside the display. "This is not natural behavior," Veltar told his hunters. "Something intelligent did this." "The primitives," Zixoth suggested. "Maybe they have more intelligence than we thought." Veltar studied the arrangement. The flowers were not native to this world according to their botanical scanners. Someone had deliberately planted them here, cultivated them for this purpose. The careful placement of the trophy and collar piece showed planning and symbolic thinking. "Double the guard tonight," he ordered, "and keep weapons ready." The psychological pressure continued to build. Equipment malfunctioned at random intervals. Strange sounds echoed through the forest around their camp. Motion sensors detected movement that vanished before they could investigate. Jake and his team watched from hidden positions as the Zephyrians became increasingly nervous. Their confident swagger was replaced by constant vigilance. They jumped at shadows and argued among themselves about what was happening. "They're starting to understand," Lisa observed from her position in the trees above the alien camp. "The smart ones, anyway." "Not enough," Jake replied through his comm unit. "They need to know this is personal. They need to understand what they took from me." On the fourth night, the Zephyrians found another message. This time it was not a trophy or flowers. It was a picture of Luna, printed on earth paper and placed where they could not miss it. The image showed her playing in Jake's garden, happy and alive under the alien sun. Written on the back in careful letters were the words, "Her name was Luna. She was my family. You murdered her." Veltar stared at the picture for a long time. The creature in the image did not look like a wild beast. It looked content, domesticated, loved. The setting was clearly the primitive's dwelling place, and the careful composition suggested the picture had been taken by someone who cared deeply about the subject. "Pack up," he ordered suddenly. "We leave at first light." "Huntmaster?" Crixall questioned. "We have not finished our expedition." "Yes, we have." Veltar looked around at his nervous hunters. "We killed someone's family member. The primitives are not as primitive as we thought." But it was already too late for retreat. Hidden in the forest around them, 4 humans with nothing left to lose had finished their preparations. The hunt was about to begin in earnest, and this time the Zephyrians would learn what it meant to be prey. Jake Morrison stood in the darkness beside his companion's grave and spoke quietly to the night. "Time. To show them what happens when you hurt our family, girl. Time to make them pay." The first Zephyrian died at dawn. Zixoth had volunteered for the early morning patrol, eager to prove himself to Huntmaster Veltar after days of strange incidents had left the entire hunting party on edge. He walked the perimeter of their camp, with his plasma rifle ready, scanning the forest for any sign of the primitives who had been harassing them. He never saw Lisa Chen drop from the tree above him. The Special Forces operative landed silently behind the young Zephyrian and struck, with surgical precision. Her combat knife found the gap between his armor plates at the base of his skull. Zixoth fell without making a sound, his weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. Lisa dragged the body into the underbrush and activated her comm unit. "One down, no alarm raised." Jake's voice came back cold and steady. "Copy that. Ben, you're up." Ben Cooper crouched in a carefully prepared position 50 meters from the Zephyrian camp. His mechanical arm held steady as he aimed the modified mining charges he had placed throughout the forest. The explosives were small, but precisely positioned, to create maximum confusion and chaos. He triggered the first sequence. 3 explosions erupted simultaneously around the camp, close enough to shake the ground but far enough away to avoid killing anyone. The Zephyrians scrambled for their weapons as trees crashed down around them and smoke filled the air. "We're under attack," Crixall shouted, his 4 eyes scanning frantically for targets. Veltar activated his personal shield and tried to establish communication with his patrol. "Zixoth, report your position." Only silence answered him. The second sequence of explosions came from the opposite direction, followed immediately by the distinctive whine of human energy weapons. Kate Morrison had modified captured Zephyrian equipment to fire from concealed positions, making it appear as if they were surrounded by multiple enemies. "How many are there?" one of the younger hunters screamed. "Unknown," Veltar replied, but his confidence was cracking. The attacks were too coordinated, too professional. These were not random strikes by angry primitives. This was military action. Danny Morrison watched the chaos from his position on the hill overlooking the camp. Through his scope, he could see the Zephyrians bunching together in defensive formations exactly as Jake had predicted. Hunters were trained to work as a pack, not as individual soldiers. He lined up his shot on the hunter carrying the heavy communications equipment. The armor-piercing round punched through the Zephyrian's energy shield like it was made of paper. The communications specialist dropped, his equipment sparking and smoking from the impact. "Communications are down," Danny reported. "They can't call for help." The psychological warfare continued throughout the morning. More explosions echoed through the forest, always from different directions. Weapons fire crackled from hidden positions, forcing the Zephyrians to waste ammunition shooting at shadows. Strange sounds filled the air, recordings of Earth predators that Ben had programmed into portable speakers hidden throughout the trees. By midday, 3 more Zephyrians were dead, and 2 others were wounded. The survivors huddled in their camp, their advanced technology useless against enemies they could not see or predict. "This is not hunting," one of the younger aliens whispered. "This is war." Veltar knew his subordinate was right, but admitting it would mean accepting that they had underestimated their enemies completely. The primitives they had dismissed as barely intelligent were systematically destroying his hunting party with tactics that would have impressed military commanders across the galaxy. "We need to reach the ship," Crixall suggested. "Call for reinforcements." "The ship is 3 days away on foot," Veltar replied. "We would never make it through open ground with these enemies hunting us." As if summoned by his words, Jake Morrison's voice echoed across the camp from hidden speakers Ben had placed in the trees. "Huntmaster Veltar, you killed my family. You stood over her body and laughed. Now you know how it feels to watch your people die." The voice was calm, controlled, more frightening than any scream of rage would have been. "Primitive," Veltar shouted back. "Show yourself. Face me with honor." "Honor?" Jake's laugh was cold as space. "You want to talk about honor? You shot down an innocent animal and called it sport. You invaded my home and threatened me on my own land. Honor died with Luna." Another explosion rocked the camp, closer this time. One of the Zephyrian shelters collapsed, trapping a hunter underneath the debris. His screams filled the air until Lisa's sniper shot ended them. 6 down, she reported. 6 to go. The afternoon brought more death. Ben's explosive traps claimed 2 more hunters who tried to escape through the forest. Kate's modified weapons picked off another from long range. Each death was preceded by a small token left where the Zephyrians could find it. Pieces of Luna's collar, pictures of her playing in Jake's garden, reminders of what they had destroyed. As the sun began to set, only Veltar, Crixall, and 1 other hunter remained alive. They sat back to back in the center of their ruined camp, weapons ready, waiting for death to come for them. "I don't understand," the surviving hunter whispered. "They're just primitives. How are they doing this to us?" Veltar stared into the growing darkness and finally understood the magnitude of their mistake. The creatures they had dismissed as barely intelligent were something else entirely. They were predators of a different kind, not driven by hunger or territory, but by something far more dangerous. They were driven by love and loss, and the need for justice. "They're not primitives," he said quietly. "They never were. We killed something precious to them, and now they're making us pay." In the forest around them, 4 humans moved like ghosts through the trees. They had spent 3 days learning their enemies' weaknesses, exploiting their overconfidence, turning their own tactics against them. Now it was time for the final lesson. "Jake." Morrison checked his weapons one last time and spoke into his comm unit. "Everyone in position?" 3 acknowledgements came back immediately. "Remember," Jake said, his voice carrying across the tactical frequency to his team, "I want Veltar alive. At the end, he needs to understand completely before this is over." The final assault was about to begin. The last Zephyrian hunter died just after midnight. He had tried to run when the human voices started calling from the darkness around their camp. Pure terror had overcome his warrior training, and he had bolted into the forest like a panicked animal. Ben Cooper's explosive trap ended his flight 30 meters from the camp perimeter. Veltar and Crixall sat alone in the ruins of their expedition, surrounded by the bodies of their hunting party. Their energy shields flickered weakly, nearly drained from hours of constant use. Their plasma rifles lay ready across their knees, but both aliens knew their weapons would not save them now. "Huntmaster," Crixall whispered, his four eyes scanning the tree line for movement. "We should have listened to the stories." "What stories?" Veltar asked, though he kept his own voice low. "The ones the trade merchants tell in the deep space stations. About the species that never forgives, about the persistence hunters who follow their enemies across star systems and through decades." Veltar felt cold dread settle in his stomach. "What species?" "They call themselves humans." The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Every spacefaring race had heard whispered tales of human revenge, stories told in fear and respect around cantina tables across the galaxy. Humans who tracked pirate fleets through hyperspace for months to recover stolen cargo. Humans who spent years hunting down the killers of their families. Humans who never gave up, never forgave, never forgot. "We didn't know," Veltar said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. "We should have asked," Crixall replied. "We should have learned what they were before we killed what belonged to them." Four figures emerged from the forest and walked slowly toward the camp. They moved without fear or haste, weapons ready but not raised. They had the confidence of predators who knew their prey was already defeated. Jake Morrison led them, his face hard as stone in the dying light of the alien campfires. Danny flanked him to the right, Kate to the left. Lisa brought up the rear, her sniper rifle trained on the two surviving Zephyrians. They stopped just outside the range of the energy shields and stood silently for a long moment. Veltar could see their faces clearly now, could read the cold purpose in their eyes. These were not the primitive natives he had dismissed days ago. These were soldiers, professionals, killers who had just demonstrated their superiority in the most brutal way possible. "Huntmaster Veltar," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly across the small distance between them. "You wanted to face me with honor. Here I am." Veltar slowly stood, his hand still gripping his plasma rifle. "You are human." "Yes. We did not know. The databases showed this world as uninhabited except for native animals." "Luna wasn't a native animal," Jake replied. "She was from Earth. She was my companion, my family, my friend. You murdered her for sport." Crixall also rose to his feet, his weapon trained on the humans. "We offer compensation according to Zephyrian law. Name your price for the creature." Jake's expression did not change, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. She wasn't a creature. She wasn't property. She was family. "We understand your attachment," Veltar said quickly. "Among my people, hunting companions are also valued. We will pay blood price, provide replacement animals, whatever honor demands." "You don't understand anything." Danny spoke for the first time, his voice as cold as his brother's. "You killed a family member. In human culture, that demands blood for blood." Kate stepped forward slightly. "You shot her down like she was nothing. Stood over her body and celebrated. Made jokes about the primitive who mourned her." "We make no jokes now," Veltar said. "We see our error. We offer surrender." Lisa's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Surrender? You think this is a war you can surrender from? This is justice." Ben emerged from the shadows behind the aliens, his mechanical arm whirring softly as he aimed his weapon at their backs. "You're surrounded. Drop your weapons." For a moment Veltar considered fighting. His warrior pride demanded he die with weapon in hand, rather than submit to enemies who had humiliated him so completely. But the rational part of his mind recognized the futility of resistance. He set his plasma rifle on the ground and raised his hands. After a moment's hesitation, Crixall did the same. Jake walked forward until he stood just outside their energy shields. "Turn them off. You will kill us," Crixall protested. "Maybe. Maybe not. But if you don't turn them off, Ben will detonate the charges he placed under your feet 20 minutes ago." Both Zephyrians looked down and saw the barely visible wires leading to small explosive devices buried in the dirt beneath their position. They had been so focused on the approaching humans that they had missed the demolitions expert working behind them. The energy shields flickered and died. Jake stepped closer, close enough that Veltar could see the pain and rage burning behind his controlled expression. Her name was Luna. She chose me when she was just a pup, lost and scared on a transport ship. She stayed with me through 3 years on this world. She saved my life twice and never asked for anything but food and affection in return. He pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic image appeared in the air between them, showing Luna playing in the garden, chasing earth butterflies, sleeping peacefully under the apple tree. This is what you killed. This is what you destroyed. Not some mindless beast, but a thinking, feeling being who trusted me to keep her safe. Veltar stared at the image and finally understood the full weight of what they had done. The creature in the hologram was clearly domesticated, clearly loved, clearly more than just an animal to the human who cared for it. "We did not know," he whispered. "Now you do." Jake deactivated the hologram. The question is what happens next. For several long seconds, silence stretched between them. Then Jake made his decision. "You're going to leave this world and never come back. You're going to tell your people what happened here and why it happened. You're going to make sure every Zephyrian in the galaxy knows that humans form bonds with other species that are sacred to us." Veltar's eyes widened in surprise. "You would spare us?" "Luna wouldn't want me to become a killer for her sake," Jake replied. "But if any of your people ever harm what we love again, they'll learn that some humans aren't as merciful as I am." Danny stepped forward and handed Veltar a small data chip. "Coordinates to your ship. You have 48 hours to reach it and leave this system. After that, we'll consider you a continuing threat." The 2 surviving Zephyrians took their weapons and began walking toward the forest. As they reached the tree line, Veltar turned back. "The galaxy will hear of this," he called out, "of what humans are capable of when wronged." "Good," Jake replied. "Maybe next time someone will think twice before they hurt our family." The aliens disappeared into the darkness, leaving the humans alone with their dead and their victory. Jake walked to Luna's grave and knelt beside the small marker. His team gathered around him, silent and respectful in the face of his grief. "It's done, girl," he whispered to the turned earth. "They know now. They all know." 3 months later, reports began spreading through the known galaxy about a species called humans and their dangerous bonds with other creatures. Trade routes shifted to avoid human settlements. Diplomatic protocols were updated to include warnings about human companion animals. The Zephyrian Empire issued an official apology to the human government and established strict rules for their hunting expeditions. Never again would they hunt on worlds claimed by the persistent species. Luna's grave became a small monument on the mining world, a reminder that some bonds transcend species and that some prices are paid in full.